we go.
Are we supposed to be fighting?
Yeah.
Is that what
The
we saw?
Battle of Two Gods.
The Battle of Two Gods.
Sunday leftovers.
All right, here we go. We talked about this morning opening the little live with some sort of a faked staged argument, but Caesar and I don't have any arguments yet. We'll have to schedule one this week. We'll have to argue about something. I can't imagine what that would be.
Well,
we're so on fire with heresies right now that we,
we
are
in the same fire right now. Maybe in a few years, I don't know. Who knows?
Maybe in a few years, God will be a Swedish man again.
Maybe again.
All right, so here we go. Sunday leftovers. We talked about Abraham and Isaac and the whole scene on the mountain where God asked Abraham to sacrifice the son that God himself, God's self, had promised and then delivered. And then, we have the scene where it's the ram caught in the thicket, and talked about it as a transition from one man's understanding of a deity that would have been very much in keeping with the ancient Near East of the time, one that would demand blood and human sacrifice and demand proof of loyalty. Right. And that transition from that God that in our text is termed Elohim, which is really a plural term of the gods, but it transitions from that to something much more personal that actually loved what Abraham loved, that wanted what Abraham wanted, and would never have stood for the murder of his son. Right?
Sometimes we decide to be selectively blind to some passages of the scripture, like this one, which is clearly the demanding of a human sacrifice. And we have other passages in the scripture in the period of the kings, when there's people sacrificing child.
The story of the one who says the next person across the threshold I will sacrifice, and it's his daughter, and
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So by at this point, you guys know this now. That what we say on Sunday doesn't matter according to Trey. It's only what we say on Tuesday. He's such a goofball. But by this point, you're starting to pick up, I think, on the hermeneutic, which is a fancy way of saying the sort of the mechanism by which we find meaning in these ancient texts, right? It's not a literal conveyance of what actually happened. Mm-hmm. In many cases, an exciting question to ask might be, did this happen at all?
Oh.
And in many cases, friends, I hate to tell you this, but whether it happened or didn't, it wouldn't matter so much as getting to the bottom of how this functioned in the faith community.
Okay.
Right?
Let me stop you there, because
right.
It is...
Are we going to have a fight?
Probably.
Oh, let's do this. I'm going to get caffeined up here.
Maybe it's easy for you, maybe it's easy for me to accept
that something maybe didn't happen.
The possibility that maybe something didn't happen because we're not reading the Bible like
we used to.
Like you used to, like literalistic.
Literally, yeah.
Literally.
Right.
We read the Bible from a different angle.
Right.
But for so many people, maybe that idea could be a little bit disturbing.
Yeah, and those people, be patient with yourself, because I think the early stages of faith are like the rings of a tree, and we've used this analogy a lot lately.
Right.
You can't go back, if you're a major oak tree, like any of these trees around us here, you can't go back 30 years and take that middle ring and say, that was nonsense. No, that was your first growth season.
Right.
There's something about human development that needs rules, hard and fast, black and white, boundaries, expectations, what is acceptable, what is not, who is God, who is not, what am I not? You need that to go from tightly, narrowly defined into something far more open, right? And so I don't ever want to convey to other people that you're dumb if you don't see the scriptures the way we see the scriptures. I've been walking with this stuff for 35 years, and it's becoming more meaningful as it opens, right?
Right.
But discipleship is not a lifelong journey in certainty. It's a lifelong journey in curiosity. Okay, so here's what's left over in my head after Sunday. And I heard from some of you, I got some very dear and sweet emails that I treasure that we're hitting some resonance here. Okay, so here's what I wrote down today as I was jogging. Yeah. Actually, I wrote down after I jogged. Discipleship is a long series of funerals. And I don't think I had the guts to say this on Sunday, but I'm going to say it now because Trey's listening now. Hi, Trey. Steaks at your house on Thursday, by the way. Discipleship is a long series of funerals of the gods that we imagined, the gods that we inherited, the gods we need to somehow now let go of in order to outgrow and release if we're ever going to find a new revelation of the divine, which is, let's be honest, the work of our lives. So discipleship is a long series of funerals where we stand around the graveside of what we thought about God. But here's the thing, as is the case with Abraham and Isaac.
Okay.
Elohim gives way to Yahweh, and that's just a way of saying a vision of an angry, punitive God that would demand you murder something gives way to a God that says the fact that you love for your son, of course, is sacrifice, of course, is not going to go forward, right? But it's Abraham had to be willing to release that version of God in order to embrace another, and I think this is actually true about life. You're going to need as many gods as there are yous that emerge from your life reality. That sounds so Eastern and so Buddhist, but I think it's true. For every version and every season of Caesar's life, there is a new aspect. Let me just say it this way. There's a new aspect or a new revelation of who God is to accommodate that need to know at just the right time. So are these many gods or is it all one? You got to figure that out. But I think discipleship is a long series of funerals.
But okay, funerals, immediately the word that came to my mind is grief.
Yep.
So when you let one of your gods die, you will grieve.
There is great grief in letting
a lot.
Listen, if your God is in any way related, I don't know why I'm looking at the camera. I should be looking at you.
Look at me.
That's why you never fight, 'cause I never look at you.
Yeah, maybe.
If I looked at you more often, I'd get in a fight.
Maybe that's why.
For if your God was in any way mixed with ideas of certainty, concrete black and whiteness, all of those things, there is great grief when you have to let that go. Because now you're alive in a world where everything isn't bolted down or welded to the deck. Now things move around. But think about it. They were going to move around anyway. You were going to outlive visions and versions and cosmovisions of God in the universe anyway. It's in the nature of human development. This is why the Jews don't read Genesis 1 and 2 as some big fall from paradise, so much as the evolution of human consciousness, right?
Right.
So there is great grief. And there are seasons of real angst.
So it's like you're an atheist for a while. Because you lose your previous God.
You're in
the middle of something.
You could call the gap in the sidewalk atheism for a moment, couldn't you? But what's beautiful, let me get back to my notes. What's beautiful about that is, for me, what keeps happening, what keeps re-emerging for me, it's not faith. It's actual faith. It's growing faith.
It's growing faith, right.
It's actually growing curiosity, which I see seamless now with discipleship and faith. It's not less, it's more.
I agree with you.
You're warned by fundamentalist systems, don't go beyond this because your little wooden ship will go off the edge of a flat earth and the sea monsters will eat you, right? Figuratively speaking. We're told, don't ask these questions. Of course it was literal. Of course this is exactly how it happened. And if you do, then the whole thing falls. But I mean, Rob wrote that book, Velvet Elvis, in the 90s, right? So anyway. So left over in my brain was that idea. I think life is a series of funerals. Life is compounding grief and release. And I think God is the energy that moves us to the ground of all being, which is always going to outlive any of your linguistic frameworks that encapsulate God. But the great work of our life must be, what can we name now? So what we can name now is, God is not tribal.
Right.
God is not male.
Yeah.
What we can name now is, God is not a warrior.
Right.
Here you go. Ready? What we can name now, and a bunch of you are going to get your knickers in a bunch over this, but that's okay. It's mostly Mary and Stan and Trey anyway. And Trey doesn't wear knickers. Neither, to my knowledge, neither does Stan. But now I've totally forgotten my point.
That's what's happening in the live show.
Things we can name now. God is not angry.
Right.
People are not lost forever. Here's another one. God is not king. Now, I know you can take me to passages where the ancients imagined that. That's the best they could imagine. I'm not telling you the way we imagine it now is the ultimate imagination or the final word. No one gets to paint the last version of Elvis on.
We feel very comfortable with in all the imaginary that previous generation made.
I love it all.
About
They're
God.
all tree rings, but God is not a king, because what does a king mean? That means there are subjects and there is a king. That still means to be In a kingdom, if you're not the king, it's still bad news because you're still power over.
That's right.
This is why I go with Diarmuid Murtru on his translation from Aramaic of the Sermon on the Mount, the teaching of Jesus. It wasn't a kingdom. That's what Luke and Mark and Matthew wrote 40, 50, 60 years later. What Jesus taught was a circle that where power imploded, where power now is equally distributed, right? So anyway, things we can name now. God is decidedly on behalf of the oppressed. I think that's part of our generation's naming. My point is,
that's true.
We must do the naming of the divine revelation before us and understand that our kids are going to see something different, something further.
Yeah.
And I think that's good news.
We need to accept that because,
And I think this is why Abraham was...
This is what we are trying to reimagine now. It works for us.
Right.
But maybe in 20, 30 years, it won't work for the next generation.
It better not work for them because what would that mean? That would mean then it's not their job to dig in and find out? You get my point.
Right.
Discipleship is endless curiosity. Truth is...
I love it. I love that expression.
Yes.
Endless curiosity.
It's endless, interminable, never ceasing curiosity. Here's another one. Truth is not a series of precepts. Truth is restlessness itself. Do you know the word restlessness? How would you translate restlessness?
Restless.
To be restless is como inquieto, inquietud.
Sí.
Or,
sí.
Yeah. So,
inquieto todo el tiempo.
Right.
Nunca descansa.
Nunca descansas, nunca aterrizas.
English back.
Okay, you don't... Truth never settles, it never lands.
Right.
It is not just restless, it's restlessness itself.
All the time, when people from Amor Original, they know that. All the time I refer that, I try to encourage them to fight with the Bible. You need to fight with the Bible all the time.
Push it.
All the time.
Pull it.
If you don't fight with the text, you will read it in a very simple way. You need to fight with it in order to grab some of the truth that is in it.
That's right. Because my argument would be, and this is what Abraham is known for, and Isaac will go on to be known for this in his own way. My argument is every generation's work is to articulate that revelation of God that builds on the accumulation of everything that preceded it.
Right.
That's every generation's work. Our work is not to go get advanced Bible degrees in the revelation of our fathers. That is not the work of discipleship. Our work is to never land, to always question, to always ask, and then to pass on to our children, to normalize, name it, normalize it, and mainstream it, that they get to go where it needs to go for them.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
that is the work.
It's a different way. It's a proposal to see the world in a totally different way.
Yep.
It's a shift of paradigm.
Yes. Well, it's disconcerting, and it's decentralizing. It's decentering. But I think it's real. So, couple last thoughts.
I like it. And then we can read some comments.
You start getting caught
up
on these.
Read some comments? Okay.
No, let me say two more things.
Okay. Say it.
So the work then is to understand from the text what would have been the contemporary articulation of God. And so in the story of Abraham and Isaac, of course the gods would be angry and demanding and somewhat capricious.
Definitely.
And also the gods at the time, in the ancient Near East, the time of Abraham, were understood to need to be provided for by human sacrifice.
Right.
We go back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, where we talked about during the gods at some point, after wiping the earth clean with water, were upset because no one was feeding them. No one was offering sacrifices. So the contemporary understanding at the time was the gods had to be provided for. What Abraham brings is a vision of a God who provides for us. Think about that. So if you're tempted to, Christina Height, because you said it on time, if you're tempted to let go of this story because it's just too crazy, hold it for that reason. This is Abraham saying, God is not the one who seeks provision. God is the one who provides for.
Right.
But we don't want to lose that tree ring. We're going to build on it, but boy, don't lose that one. That's a very important one. Okay. So this is the revelation of a God that loves what we love, that loves the fact that we can love it all. And I think that's the essence of the story. Okay, what do we got for comments?
Interesting. Yeah. I think we have a big comment here in different parts.
Okay.
Let's see.
You want to start with that one?
Yeah, with this one is
a sacrifice of the flesh. Leave it up there. I can see it. You can take your mouse off. A sacrifice of the flesh. Perhaps our animalistic lizard brain tendencies, our wild side, versus our domesticated side. A seed of faith growing and growing.
And I think that's all.
Yeah. I got to the end of this, and it occurred to me at the end of the sermon on Sunday that I didn't leave enough time to make this point, but I tried to make it. God, at the time of Abraham, or at our time, at any time, God doesn't exist in some theistic safe space outside of the material world. There isn't a third tier to the cosmos. God doesn't hover just beyond the clouds. I mean, we've probed the depths just today alone. A new photograph from have you heard about this? The Webb deep space operation that's now able to take pictures of galaxies. Anyway, since we learned how the sky works, we know God doesn't just hover just out of sight. So it wasn't as if Elohim is this God and Yahweh is this God in their fight. These are notions of purpose and meaning that emerged from within Abraham. So animalistic versus domesticated nature is a very near way to understand what we have. This is something whispered to Abraham and said, you love this too much, you must sacrifice it. And then something said, no, the greater wisdom would be, love it, hold it dear, because this will bring God pleasure. That's an internal thing. But the ancients didn't understand God to be seamlessly in cohabitation with us from the inside. That's a much later revelation. So we don't have to go back and look at God as some warrior king in a chariot being pulled across the sky, Egyptian steeds. This is a war of two gods inside. And I say that because that's your life. That's my life. That's my every decision. That's where it happened. So, yeah, anyway. Okay. We're still not going to...
We have some Mary Johnson.
Mary says, our relationship with God is always changing in our understanding. It absolutely is. Here's the thing, Mary, and you would know this, second nature, but for anyone else who's listening, if your revelation of God and your relationship with God isn't changing, then I don't think you have a relationship with the God I'm talking about. You might have a deep connection to a system, and that's okay, and that's where mine began and stayed for 20 years. But a relationship to God is a commitment to the movement of this, the never-ending curiosity to know more, experience more, feel more, have more, hold more, understand more of the ground of being, the nature of all things. Yeah.
Brendan.
Gives into trusting to be broken like a wild Mustang or a dog, leading to trust and to love their master. I think it's a lot of comments and a lot of pieces, but
maybe.
I think you're onto it.
Yeah.
I think you're onto it.
It's more. Oh, sorry.
Living water bubbling up in a well. Yeah. I mean, where does the voice of God emerge in you? Jesus would go on.
Water to grow.
Jesus would go on to say, profoundly in the Sermon on the Mount, which, by the way, not all of the gospel writers even record Jesus to have preached, but nonetheless, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus will say, "It's the heart. The heart is the center of the universe. It's not whether you murder or not. It's whether it rises from within." And so we know this to be true about all mystics, which is why I claim Jesus was a mystic. They understand that everything is inside and it all rises from the middle, right? And so when we are in a transition between an old version of God that no longer works and a new one, that's going to be an internal war. It's going to be an internal reality. And it will be way less contingent on outside circumstances than most of us were trained to believe. But yeah.
Right. Well, we have... Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one.
Michel Perez.
I'm sorry,
so God
she's
is not
an original.
immutable. He changes as I change. Oh, sweetheart. Ha ha. Is God? Who said God was unchangeable? Grab your text and look at how
it
many
says
versions.
In our systematic theology.
Yeah, well,
it's there.
Okay.
Accept that idea.
We're gonna have to fake fight. And you almost knocked over my coffee onto your very expensive computer, which would be a thing that then we really would.
I'm sorry.
Is God immutable? Who says this? This is Reformation age thinkers, so pre-modern, late Middle Age philosophy.
It's an heresy from the Greek philosophy. Yeah, they came first to the idea of the immutability of God.
Right.
Yeah.
If the world is out of control, then we create gods that are in control. Who was the Greek philosopher that said, if horses had a god, it would look like a horse? So to the degree that we need immutability in the Godhead, I think it functions to say there are things about God that are unchanging. What are those things? That he is ferociously committed to all, that he is deep, he, she, they are seamlessly and indivisibly implicated in the material world. Does that change? That doesn't change. But do our linguistic articulations of what we can see, know to be true about God change? Oh my God, if they didn't change, what would be the point of compiling any of what Stan calls the spiritual travel journals of the travel journals of our spiritual ancestors? What is the Bible if not 1,000 images of God?
So, look at this one.
Fired up.
Look at this one.
It says
the last
a God
comments are
who
from
does,
originals.
I know, son tus.
Los originales.
gente que se porta
Mi
mal.
gente que se porta mal.
A God who does not change could not be God. Oh, Abrahamcito.
Son un montón de herejes.
Oh, a God who does not change cannot be God. I'm curious how you're defining God there. Because next week, here's what we're going to look at. Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh my goodness.
Abraham literally enters into negotiations with Yahweh to say, okay, 50, what about 45? What about 30? What about 10 righteous people in the city of Sodom?
Was like those TV shows like Pawn Stars? Like, okay.
Pawn Stars? Not porn stars.
No. Pawn. Oh my.
Like, I don't know what you're watching on TV. Pawn Stars. Got it.
Pawn Stars, yeah.
Negotiation, right. Listen, does God change? I don't know where we fell in love with the image, but I'm guessing it was at a time, and I'm being tender here, it must have been in a time in our human development where we needed to know something was unchanging. Well, I do need to know something is unchanging, to be honest, and it is that love in the end gets its way. I need to know that that's unchanging.
Yeah.
But God as king, God as male, God as angry father, oh sweet Lord, let's let that go.
Sure.
Now, if that lowers the definition of God, then you got to figure out what
to expand our definition.
Well, then you need to know what to hang on to. So if it's better for you to leave that intact, hang on to that. But what I find when I let go of this immutability of God, because I was taught that in seminary like the rest of us.
Right.
What I am able then to grasp is what all the Eastern mystics would say is the release, which is now the posture to actually receive. Because if I'm taught in a seminary class about the immutability of God and those characteristics, then I have to clinch that and defend that. But I would rather live my life as a disciple like this, alive in a world where the posture of reception is my modus operandi, not a series of dogmatic points that come to me from John Calvin or any of those who came after.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That doesn't mean I'm 100% right. It's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. We kind of talked a long time at 23.
I mean, this series has been a blessing for ANC. It has been a blessing for me. And it's good to
We're only halfway done.
To talk every Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
Tuesday afternoon, actually.
Pretty soon, God's going to burn a whole city to the ground, and then fish are going to eat people. And then, what else we got?
Right.
A couple other strange stories.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch the weight come off the shoulders. My favorite part is watching my ANC people come to church and bring their kids with them because they know their kids need to hear these stories, because some of us as parents have been reluctant to tell these stories because we didn't know how. And so we're discovering something really fun as a community, and it's been really interesting
and
to see.
FYI, the sermons are there on the ANC
Facebook or YouTube,
Facebook profile, and also at iTunes for podcasts if you want to hear and not watch this guy talking.
Because everybody speaks English, don't they? Everyone in the world speaks English.
Everyone, yeah.
You know what they told me when I was a kid? There's two kinds of people in the world: Americans and bilingual people.
How do you call people that just speak one language?
Americans. Yeah,
that's
it.
Okay.
Anyway,
my goodness, this was fun.
Don't leave it hanging.